We're live.
Oh, we are live. Good morning or good evening in your case.
Almost evening, 4 o'clock
G'day.
my time and 10 a.m. your time, right? So, and on Wednesday,
Absolutely. From
right?
down under. We've done that wonderful thing. Normally people flip the cameras horizontally, but for these shows, I'm flipping mine upside down so that we're actually,
Right.
yes. How are you today, Jacqueline?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Damien? And
Uh,
welcome everybody to Pathfinder Authentic Leadership.
Absolutely. We're live. We're talking today about values, identity, and the authentic gap, which is really important too. I mean, when we look at our values that drive us, especially, a lot of times we can feel like we're a little bit lost and we go to work. I mean, how many people have you met that go to work and feel a bit numb and just want to be somewhere else? There's their motivation. And a
So
lot of times that's a disconnect between values and the organization's values. So it's really, especially as the leader, if you're getting numb, that's not a great way to be leading people because how do you inspire people if you don't want to be there? People pick up on that.
it's so true. People really do pick up on the energy that somebody else is bringing, and the leader really does dictate the energy of the day and of the company. And
Yeah,
the values that we have as leaders, really it matters so much to the organization and the culture and alignment with the people who walk in on Monday morning.
absolutely. And it's really, I mean, it's an interesting journey that we go through because a lot of times we just inherit values without even thinking about it. And this is on different from inheriting quotes and things is that when that drive us those inspirations that we have. But certainly the values, a lot of times we don't question them. We just kind of given them or we grow up with them and we don't analyze as to whether they're useful to us as well. I mean, generally our values don't change, but we do have the ability to change them if they're not serving us. Mhm.
And what we're just saying that it's, I the thing that just comes to my mind that is, we are growing up in a household, and the things that our parents have said to us over and over and over again,
Yeah.
and we take it like that's what everybody thinks, and it's not right, right? Because we
Yeah.
think it's our household, right? Everybody thinks this way, and then
Yeah.
you get out into the quote unquote real world, and you realize, oh, not everybody thinks that way. That's not how everybody is, and everybody has differences of opinions, and we have to learn to take what we've learned from the home and decide what we want to make our own. And if we want to shift things, we have to know who we are first and grow into who we are to know
Mm.
what values matter most, because not everything that we learned when we were, from 0 to 18 serves us.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things that don't serve us, and it becomes one of those things where we was it Life's Search for Meaning, or there's a number of books like that. Certainly, Viktor Frankl's book as well is really really important, and a lot of useful information there, and finding that meaning. But a lot of times too, we forget that we have the choice. That it's our choice as to what we want to have as our values. And it was a long journey for myself going through that process, going, what are my values? And the realization that you get to choose. You can just say, these are my values. We were talking before in the pre-show about a quote that I've got a bit from Grant Carey. He said, I pretended to be someone I wanted to be until finally I became that person or he became me. And it was really interesting the philosophy behind that quote. And for those that are watching, you can just chuck that quote into an AI chatbot and say, what does it mean? And it's really interesting how that it comes back to you have the choice to choose whatever it is that your life is going to be, which includes your values. And that's I think it can be a difficult concept for people to get, to go that your whole framework because it's not this solid foundation that we build ourselves around, which is okay. That you can just go, actually, I want to be different, and you can just be different, and it works. Yeah,
It's choice. You have a choice. You have a choice to say, is this who I want to be today?
yeah.
Or do I want to be something else? Or do I
Mm,
want to, like, how, if something happens and you realize, you know what, I really do want to change, or, we look at our values and the things that really matter the most to us, and we've heard this before too, where as a leader, I want to emulate or be like this leader because of the things that or she has done, and the
yeah,
value that they have. You can, as the quote says, you can take that on if you choose to, and embody those. It's
yeah.
going to take work to do that, but that's the point where you have to embody where you want to be, and you have to be thinking about where you want to be going. And we have the choice to change and become great leaders, and become the leader. We want to emulate a leader and take on that, so we make it our own again. But it comes down to choice, desire, and being conscious of our actions.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that's really important is that leadership it's not something you have. You don't go to a supermarket and buy some leadership off the shelf. It's not that I
I know,
haven't seen
leadership's
it. I know
something
some people that try, but it doesn't work that way.
else.
And leadership's a process. It's something you do. It's the process of leading. It's an action word. So it's something that you actually do, and there is a process behind that, and that process is driven by the values that you choose to have. And I'm very specific about that, saying that the values you choose to have, and that's where my personal journey was, recognizing, that was it. And my core value, which I isolated, and again, I just chose it. I created it and said, no, that's my core value. My core value is you are as powerful as you choose to be. What do you choose? And from a fundamental perspective, that gives you that flexibility to go, well, okay, are there things that are not serving me? Because when you, as you were talking about, Jacqueline, whether you're consciously aware of it, um, your behaviors, the actions that you do, we don't think about them before we do them, generally speaking. I mean, how often have we done that? It's certainly in the moment, in those high stress moments, someone runs in and goes, "Oh, this is all blowing up." You don't sit back and go, "Okay, what are my values? What do I need to do?" You just react, and you're reacting from your unconscious. All action is unconscious. We can't consciously think about that. Our conscious mind, what processes, was it 5 to 9 chunks of information, depending on the person, somewhere in that vicinity. There's too much information to process to do it at a conscious level. So you've got to do it unconsciously. Action comes from your unconscious, and that is then it is driven ultimately by your values and your beliefs. And then you add into your reticular activating system, which filters. So your reticular activating system draws from your beliefs and goes, what information is relevant here? So if your values, beliefs are not in line with where you want to go as far as a authentic leader and someone that is very effective in getting things done, which is ultimately what leadership is about, then you're going to filter out information that's relevant and make your whole life kind of really challenging.
Right, right, right. It's we have to remember, as you were saying, leadership is something that we're always learning and getting better, and we have to be able to acknowledge, oh, I may not have done that right, I need to do
Mm.
that better. So we need to, look at how we are. We need to track our performance. We need to be able to reflect, on what we did and our
Like
actions.
MMA, you're talking about there?
I
I know you love MMA.
And
MMA.
say it all the time: measure, monitor, and adjust. But
Yeah,
it's so important, because you have to, you know, because we're not, we don't come out of the womb leading.
that's
We
skill.
have to learn. It's a skill, and it's a
Yeah,
skill to develop.
yeah.
And we always hear of, the companies and people who are saying, "Oh my God, I left this company. The leadership wasn't great." you know,
Mm.
and it's so if it's not great, how can you help it be better? You can take on and learn, not just reading in a book, but read something and put it into action. Read and do, and if you do, then it works and you like that, then you can keep doing it again and again, so that do does go from a conscious behavior to the unconscious behavior. And then
A-
find another thing that you want to learn and do. And again, see how it plays out. Does it work well for you? Does it not? And if it doesn't, then you don't keep doing it and you go find another do, right? And
Exactly.
right,
Measure, monitor, and adjust.
right.
Exactly. And what you're talking about there is really relevant too, especially although I mean our show's more focused on the CEO and those type of leaders at the management area. But if you're in a position where you aren't the leader, it's really important to recognize that you can actually influence that decision. And a lot of times people are talk about how they uh, or don't recognize that they have that power to influence that. And I was just thinking of an old joke. It was a and it's across multiple cultures where they have the joke. They say, the man is the head of the house, but the woman is the neck, and she can turn the head any direction she wants. And then, but yeah, exactly. So as a leadership principle, it's important to recognize this is really important as you develop as a leader. That the whole point of leadership is influence, and so if you develop those skills, you might not be the ultimate boss, but you develop that influence skill that actually helps not only lead the person above you, but lead the people below you because it's a skill that you've developed of influence.
Yeah, right. And how important it is that skill, so that it's so important to lead up and down,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
as that leader, knowing, and we've talked about this and shared, like, when you know your values, right?
Mm,
And you know the people that you want to be part of your tribe, whether it's your company, when they're all aligned with similar values. They don't all have to be the exact same, but similar values. It's
mm,
amazing what that tribe can do together. And it's also when the people that are in your tribe and you're leading them, it's amazing what they will do because they respect you and they believe in you and they trust you, because again, you're aligned with your values and you're leading them,
mm.
and actions that you have developed are ones that they respect, and maybe they want to emulate themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where what you're talking about there, that alignment of values is critical, not just between the leader and the other people within the organization, but the leader and the organization itself. Now, a lot of times for companies, when you have a person that's founded them, the company's values will be the same as the leader's values. They generally won't be stated. That's just how it evolves because the leader's values flow through that. But what you're talking about there, it's really important to have that alignment in values as to where you're going. I mean, if you have a value that you're really, really serious, let's take that as an example. I'm just doing, this for the correlation. You're really, really serious, and that's how you operate. And you've got someone who likes to crack jokes all the time. Um, it's gonna make for a dynamic relationship in the sense of it's probably gonna get really frustrating. And that's not to say either is right or wrong, it's not, but it's just that philosophy. I mean, when you take, an example of Google and how, they have, a bit of that fun atmosphere, and then maybe take, the values of Warren Buffett, and put them together, they're not gonna gel, that's not gonna work together. And that's where it's really, as you say, it's really important to have a clarity around those values because you're aligning with people with the same values, especially if you've got difference of opinion, which is important because that's where innovation comes from. But if you've got a foundation of the same values, you can then thrash out those differences of opinion in that framework of the same values to come up with some really amazing stuff.
Yeah, right. And that's where, when you have people that again are aligned, but they can agree to disagree, but there is amazing things that can happen because they are able to actually communicate without, there might be some budding, but there's a more of an alignment, so you can get innovation, you can get great ideas flowing, and hopefully you're in a place where it's not, "Oh, I got to be better," because you're working more collaborative than than for yourself, so to speak.
Absolutely. It sets the underlying framework of where we're going. So you can have those discussions because there is a guidance along where we're ultimately going, what we're really about. Um, and that's where that's really important to understand that, but also too to understand as a leader, as as you mentioned at the very beginning, to examine your own values because they're things that as you're growing up, they're effectively imposed on you. They're not things that you've actually just chosen yourself, although you have the ability to choose that. And that's a real awakening moment to go, okay, what are my values? And this is where we need to really accept that we're more than just our behaviors. We're more than our title. We're actually a being
Right.
and a wonderful being that has so much capability to do so many different things. An example of where that really hit hard for people was back in the early NASA program, which is kind of pertinent now that the Artemis is heading off to the moon
Right.
as we speak. But the early NASA program, when they went to the moon and come back, and then what did they do after that? So a lot of the astronauts actually suffered depression because, again, what was their values? What was driving them? That was focused on what they were doing, and as opposed to who they are as a being, which is a really important thing. Which is when, we look, and that's why I use my example of my own core values, that you are as powerful as you choose to be. What do you choose? And that really encapsulates that you can pretty much do anything in your life. You've just got to choose it. It's your choice. And so that will fundamentally guides everything. And when we chunk up and have those high core values, which are applicable across multiple theaters, you're able to do so many different things in so many different spaces. And as a leader, that's really important.
And wouldn't you say that your values also help you make the right make decisions, because you're making decisions,
Absolutely.
right, based on those
Yeah.
values that really
Yeah.
align with you?
That's where we're coming back to exactly that point, as we mentioned earlier. When as our decisions that we making the values give you clarity as to what to decide. And especially today, it's really important the confusion that people have with so much information out there that because they're not sure of where they are, who they are, what their values are, at an unconscious level, everything feels important. So you feel like you've got to categorize everything. And people are now using AI to create a second brain to categorize everything that happens. And it's like, because you may need it later.
Right.
And I love Einstein's comment there. Why should I remember anything that I can look up? And that's the advantage we have today. You want to know something, just ask and you'll
It's
get the
fast, right.
answer.
Yeah. And I actually, it's so funny, it's one of the things that I absolutely love, right? So, you're sitting around having a discussion, like, "Ooh, let me look that up. One moment, please." And then it's
Exactly.
like, "Okay,
It's
can
gotten
you
rid of the pub stories, hasn't it? You can't
right? Like,
because you can fact check it immediately.
right. Can you check this? Oh, and by the way, can you please make sure that you give me 3 references to make sure that I know it's actually a fact, not a fiction, right?
Yeah.
This key thing, like we do need to fact check, right, things. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it is really important and because there is so much information out there. There is so much gumph out there as well. And to be able to then have that clarity of direction, this is where when you get very clear about your values and you know what they are, it guides everything you do at an unconscious level. So it's happening without you even having to worry about making the decision because you've trained yourself to do it at an unconscious level. So it's all going on in the background and you're just progressively moving through it and getting things done because information will come in, it'll be filtered automatically. Your reticular activating system will just go, know what's relevant. Then you can just act on that and move forward, which ultimately is what leadership is about. And I think, especially now in today's world with AI, it's really important to understand that that the knowledge gap, sorry, the knowledge gatekeeper
Yeah.
has lost their value, because it was back in the day, back when we were, hunting in tribes, and it was the elder that knew which plants to eat and which plants not to eat. They had the power because they had the knowledge. You go, forward in time to when they had the monasteries, and they had the libraries, and then the people that could read had the knowledge. They were the gatekeeper. They had power. And to allow that information to go through today in our AI world, you have access to all that information. So knowledge is no longer the source of power. It's the person who gets things done has the power now.
Well, and not only that, I think the other thing is the person who knows how to use the tool to pull out the information
Yeah.
so that they can actually discern what is actually true or not true, but being
Mm.
able to use that, and is so powerful,
Oh,
because we can all, or we should be able to know how to do the search, but your search versus my search might be too different, because I might have more knowledge to ask a question differently, right?
yeah.
So, being able to have that knowledge base to be able to deepen the question to get additional knowledge out.
Oh, absolutely. And that comes down to the questions you ask, which is sourced in your values. This is really, really critical. What are your values are going to determine the questions that you ask. A great example, a tragic example, was Brigadier General Billy Mitchell. He predicted Pearl Harbor 20 years before it happened. He showed the Navy. He was a brigadier general, and he showed the Navy, look, air bombardment, your battleships are not as safe as you think they are. And they gave him, the military, the Army and Navy gave him 24 hours to prove his point. And he had a German battleship that was captured in World War One. So he had 24 hours to see if he could sink this battleship in 24 hours. He sunk it in 21 minutes and 30 seconds with his bombers. And then the military, because it fractured their thinking of what their values were, and everything was built around the battleship and things like that. So they rejected it. They said, "Oh no, that's not realistic. It couldn't happen." And he kept pushing the point. He actually got court-martialed. They removed him for insubordination and
Of
and
course.
yeah, because it was not good conduct and not good military discipline was, and so but what it come down to is the question was, they didn't ask the question, was he right? They asked, is he conforming to military doctrine? And so military doctrine was the battleship is the way to go. Now, had they changed the question and said, is he right? Then they would have got a different answer. But in today's world, in the AI world, if you ask the question, is he conforming to military doctrine? You'll get the answer that says, no, he wasn't. And not only will you get that answer, you'll get it with a 99.9% confidence. You'll get it
Right.
formatted perfectly. You'll get beautiful language around it, but
Right.
you won't get an answer to the question you really need to be asking is, was it right? Is he
Right.
right?
Was he right? And how could history been changed?
Mm. And this
Right?
is really, really important when you look at that, because when you look at those papers and what he put forward, he identified 20 years earlier, in 1921, he identified the risk was to the Pacific Fleet air bombardment from Japan at dawn. And that's exactly what happened 20 years later. But because they didn't ask the questions, and this is where your values are really, really important, to have those overriding values, and that allow you to see, to look beyond what is right in front of you, and not frame things to fit your values, but to really question what's going on, what's happening here, because that's, as a leader, that's going to really serve you.
And that really big part of that is, and one of those values needs to be, as that leader, you know not to just be in the box, right? We
Yeah.
need to be able to have outside influences and have other people thinking the core value there's was protection. I believe in
Mm.
protecting the fleet, right? That's a value. I want to protect what we have.
That was his value, yeah. I'd say the Navy's value was to protect their established doctrine,
Right, exactly, right?
which
And
is
so
what institutions do generally. They protect the institution
they're protecting the
until it blows up in their face.
that's where like it's to remember, what's looking at the values as as a leader, is my value based on the fact that we've been doing it this way for so long, and we want to keep it the same because that's what we know. Or
Mm,
my value, I'm open for innovation. I'm an innovator. One of my big values is I like change. I like innovation. So if that's something that you embody, then you need to be open to other people being able to make suggestions and not
yeah.
just be so focused on, you know, the doctrine that you've been following. Because, and I think that's where you'll hear this a lot of companies these days, or individuals will be like, oh my God, they can't think outside the box.
Yes. You do hear that a little bit.
Right, right. And that comes from, somewhere along the line, it's like, I just need to follow the rule. I need to follow this. This is how we do it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if the value was, as the overarching organization was open to suggestions and innovating and doing things and helping people make suggestions to tweak things to be better,
Mm,
there is a place to offer and provide the space that you can hear from people within your company, within your tribe, so to speak, that you want to hear what other people have to say, because you're over there pushing this button and I'm over here pushing this, but you know what, there's one in the middle we don't even think about.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, it is really important to have those values that open up that level of thinking is what you're talking about,
Yeah.
is if I'm understanding. Yeah. So, because it's not, this is my identity is this, and that becomes the value. And that, because that's mixing things together anyway, and having that higher principle that you are very capable and that you can deal with any situation, that's a value. I just want to pull back some notes that I've got. It is really important to have that higher level of value, and that's where and so I know I'm using my example, but it's a real example. It's like, you are as powerful as you choose to be. What do you choose? So that enables that value as a core value, enables things to happen. You look at Apple, for example, their core value was, people with amazing tools can do amazing things. I'm paraphrasing that, but that was the fundamental core of their value. Give people amazing tools so they can do amazing things, which then opens up a whole theater of what is capable, and that then guides you back to where you need to be. And that's a really, I think, a pertinent example
Yeah.
of a leader, Steve Jobs, being in alignment with the company. But effectively, Apple was Steve Jobs, which is where that alignment comes from. It is really important to have those, like you say, those values that open up that discussion, so that you can think outside the box while maintaining your own confidence and self-esteem as a leader. It's really important.
Yeah, it is. It's so important, and it's it's interesting to see leaders in companies who struggle with that,
Yeah.
right?
It's fascinating to watch. I
Yeah,
mean, it's sad to watch, but it's fascinating. It's like watching a slow train wreck happen. You've got this, this high speed bullet train, but you're in that slow motion mode where you can see it all playing out, and you're going, don't. And it's like, and off they go and do it anyway.
you know, um, there, during the pandemic, there was a company, and uh, the CEO had a bunch of his, getting back to values. The CEO um, always like to have his employees suggest different organizations for charitable charitable contributions and things that they should get behind as a company. And there was a bunch of people in his company that suggested a particular organization. I'm not going to mention it because it can be a little bit political. But what ended up happening is he looked at it and he said, you know what, this company, this is an organization is not something that I can get behind.
Mm.
And I don't think it's something that we should get behind as a company. And what he ended up doing was offering the people that were so into, following this organization, he offered them a package to leave. And what
Yeah.
ended up happening is that the people that stayed and that were part of that company, they flourished. The company flourished because it's the alignment of the people that were there. It was, the rising tide that lifted everybody together because they were all aligned. And when you took out the things that the people that were not, it took
Mm.
out it cleared the way for bigger and better things. And
Oh, absolutely.
it's that key point where, bringing people into an organization is all also based on the values of the organization. And again, it starts with the leader.
You're so right, Jacqueline. That's really, really important to highlight those. That alignment of values is really, really critical. This is why it's important as a leader to, one, understand your values, but two, also assess, are your values serving you as a leader? And is there anything that needs to change? Because if it's not serving you, and if it's not getting you to where you want to go, and you have the ability to change it, why not change it?
Right.
And this is that's why, again, I was highlighting the core value. That wasn't something maybe I was brought up with, maybe I wasn't. I don't know, but it wasn't. When I specifically said, "Okay, this is my core value," it became really powerful for me and really, really grounding and guiding for everything that happens. And it's really important as well, like you say, that the organizations, it have the value alignment as well. Particularly, I mean, as we move, I know in Australia we've got new legislation that came in last year, psychosocial wellbeing, which falls under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So basically, psychosocial uh, injuries, as we call them, are treated exactly the same way as soft tissue injuries. So basically, it's the same. If you create an environment that is damaging to a person's mental well-being, it is treated the same as if you created an unsafe physical work environment, and it's legislated. But that's really important, certainly from a leadership perspective, because that's where you need that alignment in values. You need that from a hiring perspective. If you're hiring people whose values don't align with your direction, that's going to create an unsafe work environment. It's going to be, I mean, you're going to be breaking the law to start with, because that's in making your life extremely difficult as a leader, because people are not going to feel like they're contributing, or that they feel part of the organization, because the values are going to be in conflict.
Right.
It's like having someone whose value is to wipe out all humanity, and someone who has the values of, wanting to grow. I know it's an extreme example, but it highlights the point. They're never going to get along. So it's, having in this where it's really important to be aware, like you said, of who you are, and having an organization that's in alignment.
Right. Yeah, it's really incredible to see and watch. And I think one of the things that as a leader, what are those things that you can do? You have to think about these things, that that the people that you're bringing in are in that alignment. And there's one example that that was given to me, and I cannot remember where it was, but it may even been New Damien, but it was, a company. Basically, one of the things that they did was, when they were in their hiring process, there was a particular value of its courtesy, right?
Mm,
And so, and prospective candidate would come in, and they would
mm.
offer a glass of water.
Yeah. You
And if
told
they
me the story.
right?
Yeah.
And if they took the glass of water and
Yeah.
they have the interview, they put it on the desk, they're drinking it, then the question is, what do they do with it when they leave the interview? Do they
Mm.
say, "Ooh, where do I bring this? Can I bring it to your kitchen?" Or, like, what do I do with it?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
And if they just leave it there and walk away without saying anything, what does that say about the person who's, the interviewee? And so it was like a telltale sign. And so
Absolutely.
think about those things that they all matter, right? It's like walking into a house, and if the kids are jumping on the sofa,
Yeah.
well, what does that teach you about the family and the parents? I mean, come on, right?
It's a great example, Jacqueline. That is superb. In that point is, and this is where it's really important as a leader, one, to understand your own values. This is really critical, and choose ones if you understand your values and they're not aligned with where you want to go, to actually choose ones that do align with where you need to go, and allow that to integrate. And that's certainly something through Pathfinder uh, mastermind that we actually help people go through that process. But also too, to be aware of how you're hiring people. What are the ways to find out whether these the people are the values do align? And that, like you said, that test with the water is a great example. And there'll be lots of, some people will say, well, it does it, but there's a number of things to test, and obviously every test is different. Excuse me. And sometimes, things fall through the cracks, but there's majority of times you're going to be successful if your test is designed well. But I
Right.
mean, I do that all the time in hiring people throughout. Most of my hiring was always about the character of the person. Certainly later on, it was always about the character, and I would, ask them questions about what was their drivers, what was their life. And I remember one person I was interviewing, he was talking about, I mean, he came from an African country where his village was raided and a lot of people were slaughtered. He managed to get out. He had to walk across Africa, somehow made his way into China, and went through and got to Hong Kong. He educated himself and then worked, and then came to Australia. He got married. He got married in China, and him and his wife in Hong Kong, and came to Australia, and we're just exploring what that was, and just that hardship and the resilience to keep going, and what he was looking for, and it was just really fascinating story that then translated into his values, his character, and he was an amazing employee. And so it's just looking for those kind of things, people that have that higher purpose, that understand their values, is really critical. And I think especially today, as we get more and more things done for us, and that we have something that gives us meaning, but we're not going to know if it gives us meaning unless we know what our values are.
Right. Right. It's so true. And when you're talking about somebody who has experienced that hardship and who then, and self-educate or
Yeah.
educate however they did it,
Mm.
I mean, those are things that, again, you can't teach character.
No, you can
Not
only learn.
right,
I don't
right,
think you can teach anything. The person's got to want to learn.
right.
So,
So the person has to want to learn. But character, it's character again is not something that you can teach. You can teach somebody to do a job, but
yes,
you can't teach the character of somebody. The only way that a character could actually ever change is if the
yeah,
person truly wants it to change because
yes,
they decided, I don't like that one thing about me. I want to change that.
yeah. No,
But
absolutely.
again, it's not something that you teach. Character
Mm.
is, you could say to somebody, what, it was really darn ass rude of you to not move that cup, or it's really, you know, your part of your character is being rude. But unless that person wants to change it, but you can't
I
teach
think,
it,
and this is where it's really important to distinguish between behaviors and intentional values.
right?
I mean, use intention there because of the example I've got. It highlights a point, but it's a difference. So when I was younger, I was helping my partner at the time. Her brother was getting married, and so I was helping at the wedding. I was out the front of the church and guiding people in, and there was a spot out the front of the church for the bride to pull up, and um, most people didn't park there, but then someone did, and my intention was to look after the bride, and I was looking after the bride, but I was stormed over and I yelled at the guy and said, "What the hell are you parking there for? Where's the bride going to park?" Now, he didn't know. There was no sign that said the bride's going to be here or anything like that. But my intention, the value that I had was to look after the bride. It was to take care of and organize things. But at a higher level, I hadn't really the approach, the behavior probably wasn't the best way to go about it. Yelling at a guy and telling him not to park there. What didn't he think
Right.
was not the smartest way of going about it. Now, of course, today I would do that very, very differently.
You might say,
Um,
"Excuse me, sir."
yeah. Could I ask you to park somewhere? And I had that same experience just recently. We had someone at a Christmas function that we organized. We had just the circumstances where people could park somewhere where they shouldn't park. It wasn't clearly labeled. Wasn't anything we could do anything about other than guide it at the time. And someone parked there, and I said, "Look, and he didn't want to move." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, my car's just over there. What if I move my car out and you park where my car is, and I'll park somewhere else?" And we resolved that. They just had that discussion and found a solution. But that's where it came from. Those values again is distinguishing between those values and behaviors. When you have values that are a higher purpose of what you're trying to achieve, you can look at your behaviors and go, well, maybe that's not the most effective way of getting to where I want to go. Because they're things as well we're brought up with. If we grow up with seeing certain things dealt with a certain way, we tend to mirror that. Kids do mirror that, or except, I know kids don't generally mirror you cleaning the house, but they see you do it all the time. They just don't tend to copy it.
They see you clean. They're like, "Oh, she's cleaning the house today. I'm just going to make more of a mess."
Yeah, exactly.
But
But,
it's true.
but
It's, it,
the point is that we a lot of times this is where it's a combination of evaluating your values, and also to the behaviors, distinguishing the two. When your values are there and go, well, my intention was to look after the bride. My intention is to care for other people. Which links to my personal mission statement. And we've got that as a guide as well. That becomes okay. Now, how do I go about doing that? And that's where, coming back to what we talked about very early, is behaviors are unconscious. We do them without thinking about it. We're consciously thinking about it. Obviously, unconsciously we're thinking about it, but we have a program that we're running, which the reticular activating system will filter information based on our values and beliefs. And that's what we make decisions on, and that's what we do.
yeah. One of my core values is always trying to make things a little bit better for the people, and if I can make somebody have a better day or leave somebody better off than when they first encountered you.
Mm.
So I know it's kind of crazy, but I'll walk into, even in a public restroom, I wash my hands. I get really mad when I don't see paper towel. And the reason why I get upset is because the counter is wet. 9 times
Mm.
I want to wipe it. I want to make it so that
Mm.
the next person who comes in doesn't have to deal with the mess. It doesn't, and it's not because I'm a woman and I like it clean. I literally want to make it so that the next person who comes up to the sink
Yeah,
doesn't.
I don't think it's a woman thing. My OCD would make me want to do that too.
It's an OCD thing. Maybe my value is OCD, but it's more about
Well, it's
really about.
attention to detail. But you're saying it is not, when you go into somewhere and it's nice and clean and tidy, it has a different effect on you, and that does link to your values exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I really believe in making it better, and like and that impression, not that every, one of the things that, I guess growing up for me, one of the biggest things, that was instilled in me is, building relationships, but also like how you present yourself truly matters. And
Mm.
and you know doesn't mean that you have to always be wearing a suit and a tie,
Yeah,
but
I
how
won't be wearing this when I go for a walk on the rail trail later.
No, you probably should not be doing that, you know, they might think that you I won't even wanna think what they're gonna think what they would think,
Mm,
but it but it's something that is, again, it's an impression that you that I wanna have for myself. I
yeah.
believe in if how I feel and how I look and how I can show up for other people is so important. And that's, again, walking into a space that's clean, helping somebody else, with if it's tidying something up, or, saying hello to somebody that I'm encountering. You
Mm,
hear, um, you know, there's those that rule. It's like if you see somebody walking in front of you and you see them, it's like 10 feet away, you can just smile. If you're 5 feet away, you can say hello. Like, how do you make somebody and how do you show up every single day? And for me, it's like if I can make somebody's day a little bit better, and if I smile at somebody or have a conversation with somebody, you know, I actually, it was really interesting. I happened to meet somebody today for coffee. And as I'm waiting my turn to place my order, I was watching this exchange of the gentleman behind the counter and this woman. And they were having this beautiful conversation.
mm,
And he was talking about how he loved his job. And I mean, it was just, it was a great conversation. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, it's a really good thing nobody is next to me, because I could almost feel the expected tension of somebody wanting their conversation to go faster. And I was enjoying the dialogue and,
yeah.
and the beauty of it. And it made me smile. And then, he and I had just had a nice exchange and kidded around, right, when it was my turn, you know.
Yes.
And again, those are certain things that we want to be able to, as leaders, you know, what is that we are embodying, so that maybe that we can make somebody else's day a little bit better,
Mm,
or how we treat other people, because it
absolutely.
matters.
And it does matter. It comes from those core values that we've got. And it becomes one of those things. It's really important to understand that process. And when you have those core values, you can structure your time accordingly. Because a lot of times we're so busy, we're busy, 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 busy. And there's a whole thing on busy work that we can address differently in a separate
Right.
thing.
Right.
But we manage it so that we have that time and we get focused on the things that we need to get done, and then because we have that core value above that, that we can then enjoy those moments like you just talked about. Which, I mean, I'll come back to my personal mission statement, which is I enjoy life and share in the joy of others. I learn something daily that helps me overachieve, and I confidently and compassionately act from my values of honesty, excellence, and understanding. That core drives it, and then it balances the day out. So I've got things that I must have happen. There's certain release dates of works that I do, that they're fixed and there's no negotiation. So that must happen. Knowing that, I then structure my day around, well, what are the things that are likely to impact that? Which is always one of my favorite. um, is it a meme? I'm not sure it was a meme, where you have the drawing of, the plan, and the plan is, it starts here, the fingers disappearing, and that's a straight line, and everything's going to go perfect till you get to the result. And then they say the reality, and the lines all over the shop and stuff going everywhere. It's like, well, why didn't you plan for that? You knew it was going to be like that. Which
Yeah,
comes to
life
your
is
values
not
again.
linear, right?
Exactly.
But I have to say, like, I don't know I just have to say this. I used to call that a graphic. Now it's a
Yeah.
meme.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes. For the millennials out there, we're talking about a meme. In our day, it was a graphic.
It was
Exactly.
a graphic.
And well, it wasn't the study that wasn't millennial. No, Generation Z, whatever they are. The latest generation, apparently, it was the first time in history that they've got not as smart as the previous generation, which is that's a different topic.
That's a
Maybe.
whole
But
It's so important though, like, because those values are so visible in a company. So like when I walked out of this coffee shop, it's like, it makes you think, okay, well, I know that top person at that coffee shop is doing something right to instill a value of having communication and helping people enjoy where they work and what they're doing. And that comes from the top.
Absolutely, and that's a key point that you just mentioned there, is it's visible.
Right.
And those values are visible. And I even noticed that, an example here, the the cleaning company that I have coming to my house and doing the work there, I noticed when I first come here and to this house and got this cleaner, they came in and they folded the toilet paper like you get in a hotel. You get they put a little V in it, and that was what it was like. And I actually interviewed the company owner. I was doing a separate podcast where I was interviewing company owners, and I asked her about that specifically, and she said, "Yes, we've actually got as a system, we do these little things that stand out and show that we care deliberately, so that our values are seen." And it was really fascinating that that process and what you talked about as being visible. And I asked her the question about, is business hard? And she goes, no, it's really easy. You just focus on the core things that matter to people.
Right.
For her, from a cleaning business, she goes, these are the core things to do. And I just showcase that we're doing it. And their business is booming and has been booming. It was booming through, the COVID. It was still happening. And she hasn't struggled. She's got, and they've won multiple awards and things like that. And that's where I think what that point that you just made about your values are visible. And this is where it's really critical for a leader to be clear about their values and choose ones that work, because that'll filter, as you said, from the top down all the way through the company. It will be visible. And if you're struggling as a company, then that's where it's really, really important to get those values clear, because they are visible. I think that's the key takeaway from today's session, actually, which is unique timing as well. Not
Perfect
that we
time.
scripted this or anything.
But it is true. It's visible, and it's, and I would say that to make it visible, to think of about first yourself as your personal company, and then your actual company that you're working with, or if you're leading a team, those all become visible to other people, and it creates, and you attract the right people, when you can get those, when you're aligned.
Absolutely. That is the critical takeaway, I think, from today's episode, is really have a deep look at your values. And you don't have to go on a quest. This is the important part. You can just choose it. This is where, and that's where, charting true north, we talk about that, about these values and that what's important to you, and being clear about that. And there's workbooks in there, there's work pages in there to go through and actually get clear about that, because ultimately you don't have to go on this quest to understand everything in your background. You can actually, just choose the values, and
Right.
that will, as soon as, and this is how the brain works. How do you create a new habit? You repeat it 21 to 28 times. It just overwrites everything. So it's the same with your values. If you go, this is my value, it doesn't matter what all the other stuff was, it doesn't matter all the baggage. If you say, this is my value, which comes back to that quote we talked about earlier from Grant Carey, I pretended to be somebody until I become him or he become me.
Right.
The more you just do it, that's who you become.
That's what become. Yeah. And you can grab the book. I'm like, where is it?
Yeah, don't you love that?
So one thing
It's down, for those who are watching the video, there's a little penguin down the bottom, and it's available on Amazon, Charting True North. It's there. It's very short, but it's a workbook. It's a practical book that actually takes you through, so you can actually work out what those values are. And I will rephrase that, because we say work out, assuming that it's there and you've got to find it. The reality is you've just got to choose. You just got to pick, these are my values.
Right. Yeah. And but I would also say, when you're watching, listening, come back next week. We are going to be here at this time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or Pacific Time, whether it's standard or savings. I always get messed up. And then It's
Well, we're going to change here between now and the next episode. Our daylight savings change, so we go back an hour. We lose an hour in a day.
okay.
Um, so we'll be at an hour. So it'll be 9 o'clock in the morning here in Australia. But we'll be talking about under pressure, how the unconscious is what drives our actions, and how we revert to key behaviors in those pressure situations, and how to adjust them so that you can actually be more effective in those pressure moments.
Yeah. And so do me a favor when come back next week and you can actually be involved, share in the comments, and we will be here to talk about this great topic.
Excellent. Thank you, Jacqueline. It's been absolutely wonderful chatting with you as always, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Yes.